The course is about, as mentioned by Engineer Matias, no? I call him Dr. Matias Maxwell. So it is about managing and operating open. So this is the learning outcomes, of course, is to distinguish the different tasks needed to deploy a new mobile network. In this case, this is the ORAN. And we should be able to familiarize ourselves, especially most of us or engineers that will be involved in the project management process in rolling out new cellular platforms. And then later on, once the project is completed and turned over to operation, we should be able to manage and monitor the systems and do maintenance and capacity planning to it. So that's the basic learning outcomes of this course. So as discussed by previous course creators, normally our courses have a syllabus, right? So in my case, the course uh, 509, in case you're planning to take it, you need to finish first most of the courses that will be conducted by Engineer Richard Matias, right? For example, RAN Intelligent Controller and also Artificial Intelligence, and including the Open RAN Value Chain Vendor Landscape, which is course 505. So basically, my course, when you have access to Learning Hub, Rakuten Learning Hub, you will have five or six modules that you have to complete, right? So my expectation is, if you are really, if you have time, you will be able to finish the course at least in a week's time. But it depends on how fast you can submit some of the assessments, right? So the assessment and rubric, uh, which corresponds to this course, are the following, right? So there will be a final exam, and the weighted average of that would be 50%. The quizzes would be uh, 25%, and the assignment and projects would be 25% as well. And that makes a total of 100%. I think what was agreed in IORA, in order to pass the courses, at least you will be able to get 80%. Am I correct, Sir Richard? In that,
Not yet finalized, sir.
okay, okay, sorry. But anyway, this would be the coverage of your assessment. Okay, so we go now to the objectives of this course. So as I have said earlier, we should be able to understand the project management principles in deploying an open run. And later on, maybe I can share with you the tools and techniques of formal project management that can be used in daily tasks in implementing projects. And of course, the maintenance and capacity management, which is inherent in the system of the ORAT architecture. Because as all of you know, this is deployed already in a cloud environment, and this is a disaggregated system. So the ORAN architecture is complex, right? So if you will be involved in a project in the implementation of an ORAN deployment, you will have several segments and you have different or major milestones before you can complete a project. And of course, our approach when we discuss project management, I normally follow two standards, which is the Project Management Institute, and then the newer one, which is more accessible and more, you know, friendly in terms of cost is the International Organization for Project Management. So for this one, I recommend that you can either join either of them. But for me, so far, I already got the program manager certification from the International Organization Project Management. It's my preference because it's cheaper. So how do you define a project? So most of us, when we are involved in our day-to-day tasks in our corporate lives, normally once we are involved with it, we're always there, right? Or we're always doing firefighting. But if you are doing a project, you should always take into account that this is a temporary entity. So you will not be permanently assigned to it, right? A project is a unique product and service or result that you have to deliver, but it should only be temporary, and the beginning and the end of the project is properly defined. It doesn't mean that it should be a short duration. It can be a long duration project, especially if it's an ORAN deployment for the whole country. It would take what, 2 years at least, or 18 months. So, but at least the period of implementation is properly defined. So it's not a never-ending cycle. So what are the main project phases? So most of you, if you already have experience in the field, normally the project life cycle that you will encounter are in the initiation phase, the planning phase, and then once you're done with the planning, you execute, right? But all those things that you are executing based on your planning will have to be monitored and controlled. And once everything is completed or executed properly based on the requirements that was agreed upon with the stakeholders, you will have to close the project. So there are certain pillars as well in project management, right? So the pillars that we normally follow for project management are, I think they are 9: scope management, time management, cost management, quality management, and so on. And of course, the last one is the project integration. So all of these pillars, if you will just download the PMI knowledge book, uh, I think sometimes it's free depending on the URL that you're able to discover. You can download it for free. But if you have problems uh, getting one, just email me and maybe I can provide you a good copy of soft copy of the PM book. So normally when we do projects, we also have constraints, right? So most PMs agree on this triple constraints. So normally we are limited by time, and normally we are limited also by scope. Scope is the one that's really mostly the one that everybody seems to have a misunderstanding, because if you don't define the scope properly, then your project will always be uh, a roll on project. There will be additional changes. Most of it will have extension of implementation. So at the start of the project, you should be able to define it correctly, all the requirements of your project. And of course, the other constraint are the resources, because as I've mentioned previously, the resources in your projects are temporary, right? So they have other jobs to do. For example, if you will have network engineers assigned to your project, maybe some of them are in network operations as well, and that's their primary project. And primary role. But when they are assigned to a project, they are only temporary, and you can only engage them for specific tasks. So this is just a review of what we have mentioned previously, the project management life cycle. But we have to emphasize here that before closing the project, you should be able to review it and talk to your stakeholders if you're able to meet expectations. So that's the first module. If you can see my screen, here is the example of what you will be seeing at your learning hub once you are enrolled in the project. So most of my course would have the lecture itself in the PDF format, and you can read through it. But most of the computation and the actual knowledge can be seen in the videos that I have published in this Learning Hub, courtesy of Rakuten. And then at the end of each course, normally there's a short quiz, which is not graded, so that you can be able to gauge if you're able to grasp the actual knowledge that is required of you. Most of the videos here also would have a transcript uploaded. So if you have a chance to review those transcript case, you will take notes. You can refer to your transcripts. So once you are assigned to the project, there are also struggles often experienced doing projects, right? There are certain delays, there are cost constraints, sometimes there are changes. So as a project manager, you have to manage that and be able to implement without any issue. So the initiation phase starts with the clarification of the requirements, right? So as I've mentioned earlier, your project would have, you know, problems if you implement it, if you don't have a clear definition of your scope. So you should take some time to really clarify most of the requirements of your project. And you should identify the major stakeholders that will be involved in your project, especially your business sponsors. They will be the one to evaluate if the project is successful, right? And you will report to them the status of the project. So it's always a good practice to identify them and maybe mark them what their role and what are their influence on the project, so that later on your project can be accepted. Otherwise, if it's not accepted, right, most of it will not be paid, especially if there are vendors that will be, involved in your project. So the project normally starts with the project kickoff, and you should be able to define the purpose and the priorities of the project, and you should decide on the approach uh, on if, for example, there will be a program manager if it's a big project, or if there will be a project manager for specific parts of the program. So you will have to decide on the approach depending on the discussion with your stakeholders. But everything starts with the project kickoff. Normally, once you're done with the project kickoff, there's a minutes of the meeting of the kickoff meeting, and you have to publish it before you can formally start your project. So when we do project management, there are certain documents that are required, right? So that everything is traceable. so that when a stakeholder raises a concern, you have a reference document that you could go back and check if his concerns are valid, or if there are issues with your vendors, right? You can always go back to the document that was signed by all stakeholders. So the first part of the draft of the scope and the objectives and the high level schedule baseline would be defined in your project charter. So the project charter is a document that you have to complete. So there's also an exercise in the Learning Hub. It's one of your assignment on how to create a project charter. So the stakeholders are the most important resources also of your project. So a project team can be composed of engineers, can be composed of developers, right? But you can also have stakeholders from your legal team. You can also have senior leadership, as I've said, business sponsors as part of your project, and other services that will be required by your project. So all of this should be defined properly in your project charter document, so that you'll be able to define the role of each of the participants of your project. We call it in project management sometimes as a RASI document. So you will have to declare each stakeholder in your project charter so that there will be no confusion who should be involved in the project. So for me, I normally have a stakeholder matrix, right? So as you can see, I will define the title of each of the stakeholders, the department which they belong to, and then I categorize them if they're part of the project team, and they're part of the uh, users acceptance testing team, and normally I have a direct contact with them. Normally I will get their mobile numbers and their email addresses, and I will have a matrix defining their impact on the project. If they have direct influence on the project or their influence is just low, then I can really identify at a glance who are the major stakeholders that I need to manage properly. So this is very important. So the requirements document is part of the project charter as well. But it's a good practice to have a requirements list of the project, of all the requirement of the project. And then once you have that, you can formalize it and put it as part of the scope state. As you can see, when we deploy an O-RAN mobile network, you will have a very complex requirement. So you should be very careful in defining your requirements. So if you will have to have separate lists for each of the segment of your architecture, then please do so. Because if there will be an open-ended uh, interpretation of the requirement, that would be a loophole that you will have to address later on during the implementation. So again, we go back that we need to clarify the requirements and have a requirements list, if ever, for each segment of your project. And these are the primary things that you need to put in your project charter. So the 5 key reasons why a project charter should be documented is it defines the objective, it sets the rough timeline. As I've said, the high level schedule baseline. And then we specify the roles and responsibilities of the project team. And then we will define the scope statement, which is the project requirements that will be the one implemented and agreed upon by all stakeholders. The project charter serves as a contract to start your project. So without the approval of your project charter, as part of the project management cycle, if they don't agree and sign to it, then you should not proceed with your project. Project charter document that does not require, a very complex document. Sometimes, if it's only a short project, it can be a one pager, right? And this is a sample of a project charter document. So most of our, actually the bulk of your work when you're doing project would be in the planning area, right? So the planning area will require you two documents. The first is the project charter. That is the draft actually. And then once it is approved by the stakeholders, you can proceed with your project. Later on, you will have to finalize the project charter and you will have to document everything in the project plan. The project plan is the refinement of the project charter. So the project plan serves as the final document or the final implementation plan that you will pursue in executing your project. So in doing your planning, once you're done with the kickoff meeting, you will have to organize and plan, produce your project charter. And then in the project charter, you don't have the detailed task yet, right? Now, when you do the planning process and you go to the project plan, you will have to determine each of your major tasks and subtasks during the implementation of your project. So this is the other document that we have to prepare, which is the project management plan. So as I've said, this is the refinement of your project charter. Here, you will have your final schedule. So that would be your real baseline. And then your cost, total cost of the project should also be defined here. And then you will have to establish how you will do your communication with your stakeholders. And you will have to document it in the project plan. Sometimes the risk assessment are also included in the project management plan, but sometimes there's a separate document for that. It's called the risk management plan. But most of the time, it is already included in your project management plan. So as I've said, the major difference between your project charter and the project plan is that all of your major tasks are already defined in your project plan. And this is what we call your work breakdown structure. That's your major task. But your work breakdown structure is also divided into subtasks, right? So underneath it are subtasks. So that completes your task that will be done for your project. And most of the time, your work breakdown structure would also be your milestones. So this is a good tip. You will also have to provide a task list and provide the duration of the schedule for each of your tasks. This will include subtasks, right? So once you have defined it, then you can come up with your Gantt chart and provide a complete schedule of your overall plan. So as you can see, most of the task and work breakdown structure will have a definite start and finish date. And of course, the resource person that will be assigned for each of these tasks or subtasks. So once you're done with all of the tasks, you will have to consolidate all of them, right? And you will come up with your planned schedule. And most of you are familiar with the Gantt chart. So you will have something like this. This will be your baseline schedule. But your overall project plan, if you will do your formal project schedule, will include most of your milestones. And you should be able to identify your critical path. So the critical path, or what we call PERT CPM, is the method that we use in producing our project schedule. So the PERT is the Program Evaluation and Review Technique. This was introduced by the US Navy in the early 1960s when they were doing projects for their ballistic missiles, right? And the normal thing that we do as a computation when we were in college is the critical path method. Project management is the longest sequence of activities that must be finished on time in order for the entire project to be complete. So your critical path is the longest, right, sequence of activities. So if there is a delay in the critical one of the major tasks in the critical path, so definitely you can actually say that your project will be delayed. So this is another version of your schedule baseline. The one in the triangle, a diamond symbol, are your milestones. So a milestone is a marker in the project that signifies the change or state of development. So most of your stakeholders or your business sponsor will take a look if the milestones are completed. So you will really have to monitor this, because if there is a delay in the major milestones that you have committed with your business sponsors or major stakeholders, then definitely there will be escalation. And part of your project plan should be how you report your the progress of your project, right? So you will have to define your communication metrics. Who are the people that needs to receive an update? So that will also have to be documented in your project. So for me, I do it this way, right? So most of my major stakeholders and business sponsors will have a time or a weekly update. So if it's not a weekly update, maybe a monthly update, then I will have to define it in a communication matrix so that I know the timing of the publication of my progress report. So to summarize, once you have to publish your project plan, you should come up with your work breakdown structure or major tasks. Underneath your work breakdown structure are the subtasks, and then your schedule, and then your communication metrics, as I have previously mentioned in the other slide. So there are two major modules dedicated to your planning, right? So if you will go to your learning hub, this is what you will see. So the first part would be your planning process and the identification of the scope and the out of scope requirements. And this is where your project charter comes in. And then your module 3, you will have to come up with the uh, understanding of how to create your project plan. But prior to your project plan, you should be able to to complete your project charter as well, because the project charter is the draft of your project plan. Okay. So once we're done with your planning, then we will have to execute, right? So the execution stage, your guide is your project plan, right? But during the implementation, you are required to produce status reports, and you should be able to have a list of all the issues and the action items that needs to be addressed by each member of your project team. So when you execute a scheduled task, uh, you should be able to uh, manage the resources that are assigned to those tasks, being the project manager for your project. So what we do normally is we have an action and issue register uh, Excel sheet, so that every issue can be addressed properly and timely. So normally I put there if there's an open issue and timing when to complete those uh, or close those issues. I mean, and once you close it, you will have a closing date for each of the issues that were completed already. So this will be the normal cycle, right? You will have to monitor and then you will have to control each of the issues that will be encountered in your project. And then you will have to have your project workbook, right? So the project workbook is the central location of all project information. Normally, I put this in a shared folder or a shared drive, sometimes in our OneDrive, so that everybody can see if there are important information. For example, if you need information, who is the vendor for this equipment, what is contact number, all of these things are being documented in your project. So this serves as a template and the historical artifact for future projects as well. Because once you have this, normally in the closing stage of your project, you will also have a review and you will define the lessons learned when you do your project. So this is the typical format of your project status report that you will have to publish to your stakeholders. This is just an example. It can be an email and not a formal report, but at least you will have to come up with a write-up that is concise and direct to the point, right? And the timing should be, if you have defined it as a weekly report or a bi-weekly report, you should follow it uniformly. So this is a typical status report that I publish. But I normally, the important part here is the issues that you have encountered during implementation. And then what are the next steps to be done in order to close those issues. Sorry, my dog is barking. Sorry for that. But anyway, this is your status report, and you can just follow this format. But there are so many templates that you can follow. You just have to download them in the internet. So, okay. So for status reporting, you have another module for that one. And that module will also include the closing of the project itself. So the same format, you will have a write-up or the presentation itself in PDF form that you can read. And then please take a closer look at the videos, because these are the actual things that you will have to do during your status reporting. And there are good speakers in the internet you could reference to when it comes to status reporting. So it's the same again. Once you're done with the lecture, the video lectures, you will have a short quiz. This is not graded, and this is just a quick assessment if you are really understanding the module before you progress to the next module. So your project normally ends, right? So once you're done with all of your deliverables, you will have to review all of the requirements if all requirements were met. And there's a review process for that one. So you will have to discuss what went wrong and what went right, right? And then you will have a final review with your stakeholders or business sponsors before you agree to close the project. So normally I have a lessons learned document. So the lessons learned document will be the Bible, wherein we will document each of the things that were not done properly, and then we will also have to document all the things that went right, and then this will be your you normally have to put it in a repository that everybody that were involved in the project will have access to, so that in the future, if there's a similar project, they can always go back to these lessons learned, so that those simple mistakes will not be done again when implementing another project. So as you can see, you will have to capture important lessons which could help others engage in a similar activity. That's the purpose of this document. And then the final one is the project approval document, which is the formal document which closes your project. And this will have to be signed again by your stakeholders, because once they're signed, then they will attest that all of the major deliverables or requirements of the project were completed and they are already happy, and your project can be turned over to operations. Okay, so that's lessons learned, and then project workbook, we already discussed that. And then as a summary of the project management life cycle, the project management concepts that we have discussed are the definition of the project, which is the initiation, and then we discussed the project management life cycle, the pillars, and the constraints as well. And then the whole phases of the project, the initiation, the planning, execution, monitoring and control, and then closing of the project. So any questions so far? Before we go to the next topic, which is operations, network monitoring, and maintenance. Okay. If there are no questions, I will just go on. So the next part of the course is network monitoring. So as you can see, the Open RAN architecture or the Open RAN system is also complex, right? So when we do monitoring of the whole network, we don't have to invent the wheel, right? Or reinvent the wheel. So most of the network monitoring uh, applications or systems are already there, right? So you just have to identify and maybe procure those systems. But the most important thing when you evaluate your network monitoring tools is is that are they capable of really doing monitoring of quality of service for each segment of your network, and then they should have the capability of evaluating as well the quality of experience of the customer. So these two things are very different, right? Quality of service is defines the service that is provided by the operator for each segment of his network. And what are those services? Normally, these are voice, video, and data, right? So these are the services that the mobile carrier will provide to you. But the quality of service is defined in each segment of their network. While the quality of experience is the quality that is being um, actually experienced by the end user itself. So this is the umbrella of everything, right? It's an overall experience. So the end user, once he uses the network, will be the one providing you the rating if your services is good or bad, right? So the quality of experience is much greater compared to your quality of service. So maybe what I can do is show a video to differentiate what is quality of service as against to uh, quality of experience. But I think I'm not sure if we have time, but I can share with you the link for this two two parameters. We call it KPIs that we need to define when we have uh, our mobile network deployed uh, to our subscribers. So the next one would be the maintenance tools, right? So there are two things that we can do to test our systems, right? So normally we can do it in the lab. So there are also good vendors who can assist us on doing simulation tests. In this case, what you can see here is the Roden Swartz simulation test lab. So here, they have two different things that they uh, test. They test the radio unit itself, and then on the other side, they test the server or the CU. So the equipment that's testing the CU is coming from Viabi, and the radio unit is being tested by the equipment from Roden Swartz. So most of these monitoring and network tools are also available uh, through your vendors. And there's a lot of readings that you can that can help you decide which simulation testers you can acquire later on when you're on the job. The other one is the end-to-end testing. So the end-to-end testing is the overall performance of your network, right? So what we call them E2E testing. So again, there are major players that can help us do this. There is VLB, which do this testing. I think locally we have Mavineer, but let me show you a video that can help us see how they do it in the context of carrier management.
An Open RAN environment allows network operators to break apart the radio, distributed, and centralized units, providing freedom of choice to select the best-of-breed vendors for the various components, creating a more price-competitive environment and promising enhanced service delivery supporting new network architectures like 5G and beyond. But this open environment also creates a new set of challenges. Testing this environment requires a new approach to ensure interoperability of a complex, always evolving, multi-vendor setup, meet strict carrier-grade performance requirements for field readiness, and support the goals of more cost-effective, price-competitive business models. End-to-end testing is critical to ensure that the extremely complex technologies spanning multiple domains, OSI layers, and network scenarios work together reliably and deliver the operational efficiencies promised by Open RAN. In this demonstration, Spirent will emulate the core network, user, and RF channel conditions. A common user interface controls all the elements surrounding the system under test, which includes a real RU, DU, and CU from different vendors. The core emulator is represented on the right-hand side. Users can see the AMF and UPF listed, and the visualization diagram shows how the core is represented and emulated. The left side of the screen contains various aspects of the core emulator, including the ability to use external data for real-world testing, such as website browsing or video streaming for a realistic testing scenario. Additional menu options provide access to parameters of this test configuration, such as the number of UEs. In this example, there are 5. However, it could be hundreds of UEs, or even a real user device. Here, the type of technology to be used is selected. In this example, the test will use 5G new radio, a single cell, and band 78. Once testing starts, users can observe the system's activity through test logs, which include setup steps such as memory allocation and error and license checks. Once running, the log file shows the 5 UEs and progress of messages. Users can choose to filter the log to only view updates on the UE or traffic layers of interest. Here, results are filtered to UE ID1 and IP layer traffic. While the test is running, users can review the user scenarios, test setup, and data traffic that's in progress. This test shows both real-time uplink and downlink bit rates. Users have the option to review real-time results in several formats, including graphical and tabular. Round-trip delay shows the minimum, maximum, and average delays along with standard deviation. Once the test is complete, results are available through log files or for export for analysis in tools such as Wireshark, which can be helpful for debugging. Using Spirent's end-to-end O-RAN solution, all test setup and execution is enabled through a single user experience with a variety of options including test types, functions to be emulated, and emulation scale and capabilities. Leveraging real-time emulation under an automated single-user experience, Spirent's pre-integrated solutions simplify and streamline the test process so our customers can confidently deploy O-RAN and realize its true benefits while achieving significant operational efficiencies. Learn more about Spirent's full portfolio of O-RAN test solutions by visiting our website at spirent.com/ORAN.
Okay, just to recap everything. So once you're done with your E2E testing, your network is also capable of doing AI and machine learning, right? So I think this was discussed previously in the course of Engineer Matias, that you can actually do beam indexing, right, in the Open RAN architecture. So since we're already in the cloud, we should be able to, in our maintenance of our equipment, we can activate machine learning and AI to assist us in finding the best way to direct our cellular sites to our user equipment. And then you have network slicing, which can also be aided by your machine learning and AI. And once you have your machine learning and AI incorporated in your O-RAN network, it can aid you to your planning and maintenance. As we have mentioned earlier, uh, if you have your machine learning and AI, it can enhance your security of your network, and you can identify patterns and tagging certain events so that similar attacks can be prevented in the future. Before I end my presentation, are there any questions, quick questions? Because my last topic would be the assessment that you will encounter when you enroll to my course. So if there are no questions, I'll just go ahead. So the assessment will be composed of a graded quiz. There are assignments and projects, and of course the final exam. So this is what it looks like in your learning hub when you enroll to the Rakuten course, which is course 509. So what you will encounter, a sample of my assessment, part of my assessment, which includes the assignment, is actually to log on to the Project Management Academy as part of the taxonomy that was provided to us on how to do assessment. Once you log into the Project Management Academy, you will be redirected to a puzzle game. And then there you will have to identify some of the terminologies, and you will have to provide the answers. And then the other assignment that were provided in the assessment would be doing your own project schedule. In this example, we will construct a 5G O-RAN antenna, and then you will have to come up with your own project schedule, and you will have to upload it in the Learning Hub course assessment. I hope you will have a good understanding and overview of what to expect when you enroll to my course, which is managing and operating OpenLAN.